Hello and welcome to episode 9 of the u3a radio podcast, which this month ticks off a couple of bucket lists from Glastonbury to the Great American Road Trip. I'm Nick Bailey, and in this edition we hear from a man who travelled on a Greyhound bus throughout America as a student and then did it again 50 years later.
In 1969, my diary reports encounters with all kinds of people, sort of young people, old people, architects, teachers, but above all at that time, soldiers going to and from the Vietnam War.
We talked to someone who very late in life eventually made it to Glastonbury.
So June 2015, got on a quarter to Sunderland, awfully long journey right down to Somerset. It was fantastic, I loved it.
And we learn about the amazing musical talent that exists in Lee and District u3a.
We called the Rolling Bones because of the age group. It's kind of 60-year-olds up to, well, over 80-year-olds.
But first, I thought I'd catch up with U3a Day from early June, where U3As around the country chose ingenious ways to promote the organisation. To give us a snapshot of how it went, I focused on a small market town in Nottinghamshire, Bingham, with a population of roughly 10,000. There, U3a ran events on both the 2nd and 3rd of June, and at the end of the second day, I spoke to the chair and secretary of Bingham U3a, the husband and wife team of John and Anne Lewis, who were having a well-earned drink in their local pub. I asked John, first of all, how the 2 days had gone.
Pretty damn good, I would say.
Well, talk us through it. Can you tell us exactly what happened starting from yesterday, 2nd of June?
Yesterday, 2nd of June, we did a litter pick, a U3a Day litter pick, but it was a kind of joint effort between U3a and Keep Britain Tidy, the Great British Spring Clean, Rushcliffe Borough Council, who was sponsoring the litter picking locally, and a company called Streetwise Environmental, who, pick up the rubbish afterwards, a very important thing. So we had a photo call at 10 o'clock, and we were joined by Rushcliffe Borough Councillor Abby Brennan, who is their portfolio holder for the community and the environment. She said she'd like to go litter picking with us. So I sent her around with one of the teams. She had a jolly good time, and we did a bit of a joint press release, and they did some pictures which are now gone up on all local media really. So we're in the local paper today.
Apart from the litter pick, what else did the Bingham U3a do for U3a Day?
Well, we did our main event today simply because it's market day. We knew there'd be much higher footfall going through the town. So we did some yarn bombing on, we did some covers for the bollards, and then arrows leading from the yarn bombed bollards up to our stall, which had all sorts of activity, photos and information.
Now, one of the aims of U3a Day is to spread the gospel, as it were. Are there many people in Bingham who don't know anything about the U3a?
About 99.9%, I would say. Maybe a lower percentage as of today, because we've done quite a lot.
And why haven't they heard of the U3a?
Goodness knows.
We have an article in the magazine, the parish magazine, every month that's given out to every single house in the town. But I think 90% of those go straight in the bin. People don't bother to read them. So we have to reach people by other means. We've got a Facebook page, you see, and we always send out press releases to all the local publications. There's posters up. It's very difficult reaching people who don't take any notice.
But did you manage to get any new members?
We hope so.
Today alone, we've had 15 written expressions of opinion with email addresses and so on, and about the same again verbally, who said that they would join via our website, join online. If all of those come good, then we've probably increased our membership in the space of say 5 hours yesterday and 5 hours today by about 13%, which I think is not bad, really.
I think you had quite a tie-up with your local community station, didn't you, in the run-up to your U3A days?
Yeah, yes, indeed. Our local community radio station is 103 the I FM, which actually goes out from Melton Mowbray in Leicestershire, but it claims coverage as far north as Ollerton and Mansfield. And Christine came along this morning and did some interviews live to air with our two celebrity invitees. Firstly, Councillor Sue Mallender, who is the newly re-elected Mayor of Rushcliffe, and later on Councillor Andrew Shelton, who is the newly elected Mayor of Bingham. So we've had a clutch of mayors who have been happy to say something nice about u3a on air.
And looking back on it, has it been, do you think it's been an unqualified success?
Well, I think so. I mean, there's been the odd one or two hitches, but basically, I think we've done the job that we set out to do. So I'm quite happy with it. Yeah.
Well, congratulations. I wish you the best of luck with your increased membership. So John and Anne Lewis, husband and wife team, chair and secretary, respectively, of the Bingham u3a. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
Have you ever had a hankering of doing the great American road trip, travelling by Greyhound bus? Well, Tim Albert from Fetcham u3a has done it twice, once as a student in 1969, and then again 50 years later as a retired journalist just before the pandemic. He kept a diary on both occasions to chronicle the 12,000-mile trip, and it's now become the subject of a book called 2 Summers. Peter Clifton asked him how the first trip came about.
Yeah, in 1969, I was a student. I was just coming up to my last year. And like I think many students at the time, many people at the time, we looked wistfully at what was happening over the Atlantic. I tried to go in 1968 and it all fell through. That year, my father had a phone call from somebody who he met on the boat going over to America in 1938. It was his trip of a lifetime. And this man had come back to London and he looked up my father and we met him and we became friends. And he was a lawyer in New York and he became my sponsor. I had a friend at the time, an American, and it was through her and her father that I managed to get a job on the Pasadena Star-News in California. So it was really a pivotal trip that changed my life.
What was America in 1969 like for you, an English lad going abroad?
Oh, I think the size of everything. I was prescient enough to keep a diary. It was just the scale of everything was just extraordinary, I think.
One thing that intrigues me, when you returned 50 years later, and I want to talk about the changes in a moment, but presumably the buses were then not as comfortable as they are now.
No, one of the recurrent themes in my diary is I've got arseache. But as a student, we didn't have money for hotels, so we used the buses as mobile hotels, basically. The longest I did, I think, was about 2.5 days, and we slept there. They weren't comfortable at all.
What were the main differences that immediately jumped out of you when you went back 50 years later?
I mean, there are all kinds of differences. One on the buses was very obvious because in 1969, my diary reports encounters with all kinds of people, sort of young people, old people, architects, teachers, but above all at that time, soldiers going to and from the Vietnam War. What shook me, one day I was talking to one and I realized he was a veteran. Not only was he a veteran of Khe Sanh, which is one of the famous battles, but he was also much younger than me. So that in itself was a bit of an education. Alas, nowadays, it's all different. You get on the bus, everybody takes out their mobile phone and nobody really talks to you until the end of the journey. That sort of bonhomie has gone.
I know you had a bit of an encounter with an old lady who in a bus station who wanted to give you money.
Yes, I mean, the kindness is still there. I was about to take a bus out of Atlanta, and I went up to a couple of very nice ladies. I call them old, they're probably about my age. And I said, excuse me, could you tell me where I could get something to eat? Thinking they'll indicate the nearest sandwich shop. At which point, one of them dug into her handbag, brought out her purse, and started offering me money. And I said, no. And I explained what I was doing. So it was okay. But I tweeted it that night, and one of my friends said, Tim, just make sure you look in the mirror before you go out in future.
Obviously, when you went over as a young lad, eyes wide open and very inexperienced, you returned 50 years later, a wiser man. Was it as you expected it to be, or was it different?
I think it was different. I mean, on the surface, a lot of it was the same. But then there were places that I'd been to that had clearly changed. I mean, Detroit, that was a thriving car capital when I was there originally, is now just full of empty buildings. In 1969, I was just bowled over by the Houston Astrodome, which was this all singing, all dancing, huge construction with the longest bars in the world, with amazing seats, with a flashing scoreboard, which was a great novelty at the time. There was no grass because it had a roof. So it was a plastic AstroTurf, which they kept together with the longest zippers in the world. And I just wrote in my diary, this is amazing. This is American sort of whiz-bangery at its finest. And for 50 years, I always treasured the Houston Astrodome as this sort of symbol of American forward thinking, whatever it was. And I went back and it was closed, and it had been closed for quite some time. And it had that great mark of redundancy, a conservation society. It had been used twice, I think, in the last 15 or so years to house victims from hurricanes. And that was it. It was empty, it was stripped, nobody knew what to do with it.
Even in your 70s, you're still quite fond of Greyhound buses.
There still is not much to beat travelling in a Greyhound bus through some of the lovely parts of America. And there still are many, many lovely parts. One of the difficulties of the bus stations, and I think because they're a public building, they seem to attract people who have nowhere else to go during the day. So some of them are pretty scary. Inside, once you're in the bus, you feel pretty safe. The drivers are still, much as I remember, very sort of calm and with quiet authority. So I didn't feel unsafe on the buses. I'm not sure whether it would be right to say it was easy, because I don't think it was, but I don't regret for a moment I went. It was a wonderful experience, and it was a privilege really to be able to do at 72 what I did at 22. But to be honest, I had to take it a little bit more gently. I certainly drank much less alcohol. I couldn't get my rucksack on the overhead locker without asking somebody, but I did it, and I'm really quite proud I did it, really.
Tim Albert, whose book 2 Summers is available from Amazon. As we know, the performing arts have been badly affected during the pandemic, and that includes music festivals. Although they had hoped to resume in 2021, many have cancelled, including the biggest musical festival in the world, Glastonbury, which was meant to have taken place at the end of June. For many years, Glastonbury had been on the bucket list of David Hann, a founder member of Houghton-le-Spring u3a in Sunderland. But as he explained to Joanne Watson, it wasn't until he retired that he managed to make it.
I've always been into pop rock music ever since I discovered the Beatles when I was 10 years old. And to be quite honest, it's never really left me. When I retired, that's when it all kicked off, really. I've always watched Glastonbury on the TV, thinking to myself, I must get myself there before I'm much older. And my son said, look, Dad, I know you want to go. Get yourself there next year. I'll be going again with my mates. And he did all the booking and everything. All I had to do was arrange my transport. So June 2015, got on a coach at Sunderland. Awfully long journey right down to Somerset. It was fantastic. I loved it.
A lot of us will have seen Glastonbury, and we'll have seen the tents, and we will have seen the mess, to be quite honest.
Yes.
So what was it like when you actually got there?
Great. I mean, my son met me at the end and said he put my tent up. And look, we had 1 day's rain. People were really friendly, and people do go in families, Grandparents go and they look after the children while the parents go off to the concert. A few people my age there, and to be quite honest, the young people are great. Okay, they might have thought, oh, it's a bit of a novelty here, but if you talk to them and they'll talk back.
What about the camping experience, David? Because I wouldn't fancy that myself. How did that go down?
Well, that was a bit rough. Yeah, I didn't get much sleep. On the morning, so stiff. Trying to get myself dressed and everything like.
Was that because you were up jumping and jiving when the music was going on then?
I think a lot of that drove me age. And I also, I've got a heart condition. I'm trying to take your medication with just a torchlight up past 11 at night. But you've got to laugh at it.
What about the music side of it? Was that something that appealed to you? Because with respect, the Beatles in 65 is a bit different from Glastonbury in 2015.
I've always kept in touch with things. I mean, I saw Paloma Faith, which was fantastic. Paul Weller, really good show.
When you got home from Glastonbury, what did your mates say?
Oh, they were fascinated. Everybody was wanting to know. I mean, I wouldn't go again. Just try it the once. Just enjoy the experience.
So you've ticked off Glastonbury, but then you weren't satisfied. You went up to Glasgow. Tell us a bit about that.
Yes. Well, I'm a mad Radiohead fan. And there's this 2-day festival. It was non-camping. Yeah, another good day.
Did you go the whole hog? Have you got the Radiohead T-shirt?
Oh, yes. When I go to these gigs, I always make sure I get a T-shirt. In fact, that's me outside the Glasgow Festival.
Yeah, you've got the shades on. You've got the T-shirt. I mean, you look, David, like the real aging rocker.
Yeah, you've got to live life to the full and just live on my own. I could just easily sort of sit myself in front of the television. But come on, you've got to do it.
Obviously, you've done the festival bit, but I understand there's a local club that you've been trying to entice your fellow u3a members down to hear some music. Yes.
Well, there's a couple of places I go to the Clooney at Newcastle, which is just a small venue, but I also discovered this Hoochie Coochie. And it's soul, jazz and funk. It tends to attract people in the 40s, 50s. Okay, I'm probably one of the ones that gets there. A couple of days before the lockdown, it was a Sunday night and I was at the loose end. I thought, come on, David, you've got to get yourself through the Hoochie Coochie. And, you're nervous. But as soon as I got in and, started dancing and met some really nice people.
David, I've just looked up what Hoochie Coochie actually means. And it apparently goes back to the late 1800s and was a sexually provocative belly dance-like dance. So you mentioned that you were dancing there, David. What sort of dancing were you doing?
You know what you do when you go to a disco, just it's soul music. Just get on with it. It does take courage, but it comes down to attitude. If you go in and don't show any nervousness, just be yourself, then people will respond and talk to you,
David Han, who says he has more festival trips in mind when the situation allows. Have you ever thought about writing your own song or becoming a vocalist, or in some cases doing both? Well, that's something that various members of the Leon District u3a have done during lockdown. And their mentor is Mel Barnes, who joins me now. Mel, welcome.
Thank you.
I think you run various musical groups, don't you?
I do. I run a lesson on Thursday morning for guitar. That's how it started out, with guitar. And more recently, it's gone to piano. So we alternate each week, guitar one week, piano the next week. Just after that, we have 2 singing sessions. A set one where members play music. They choose a song each week and sing it, and the other people play at home with the mics turned off because of the latency problem. There's a gap in between people getting the 2 songs together. So if we don't mute the microphones, it just sounds horrendous.
And I think for this vocal group, you have a rather unusual name, don't you?
Yes, we're called the Rolling Bones because of the age group. It's kind of 60-year-olds up to, well, over 80-year-olds.
Well, once lockdown started, and we're in the third lockdown now, did you get this together on Zoom straight away?
Yeah, it was run initially by a lady called Candice Barber, and I think she found the computer side a little bit overwhelming, so she wrote to me and asked me if I could run it. So I said yeah, and then people started saying they wanted to learn piano and guitar, so I said, well, I'll teach you guitar if you like, and then it went over into piano, so that's how it's moved on.
When did the vocal group start?
I joined it about 2 years ago, so it was well before that. I'm not responsible for starting the group or giving it a name. The name was chosen by other people, so it's been going a while.
But you're really the spearhead for what's been happening on Zoom, particularly with the vocals, and this is what we're going to hear because you put together a medley of 5 songs. We can only afford the time for a minute each, but can you explain how those came about?
I started to write songs a while ago, I think at the start of Zoom, and I've written some in the past. And one of the guys and one of the ladies asked me, could I put a backing track to their songs that they'd written? So on one of them I composed the music, and on others I actually played the backing track for them. And we started then posting it out to the rest of the u3a players. It carried on from there. And I finished up writing 16 songs. I finished my last 2 yesterday. They've not gone out yet. And basically, that's how it started.
So, Mel, can I get you to introduce the pieces? The first one I know is Mystery Lady. And I think that's not only sung by you, but composed by you.
It's a kind of jazzy song, a slow jazz song with a strange ending because it's actually about a cat, but it sounds like it's about a lady of the night.
The next one is Damselflies and Butterflies, lovely title. And that is sung and composed by, actually, Gwen Caddick.
Yeah, she wrote to me and said she'd written this song, which was a very wistful type of song, and she said, could you play some music to it? So I sat down at the keyboard and thought about a nice sequence of chords and some introduction using a panpipe, which gave it a nice feeling of wistfulness. And she was very happy with the result.
Then we have something more upbeat, More Than That, which is sung and composed by Bob Sullivan.
Bob tends to sing in the Bob Dylan style, plays his guitar, folk guitar, and he asked me could I put a backing track to that, which I did, and he made a good job of it.
And then we have one written by you. It's called One More Dance, but sung by Joe Barmer.
Yeah, Joe is the one who was an 80-year-old. I wrote it with him in mind, actually, because he likes the old type of music. If you play anything by the Beatles, he said it's not proper music. So I looked for a kind of 1930s big band type style, and I played it with that and sent it off to Joe, and he sent it back, and he was very happy with it.
Well, there you go. I've written dance band next to it. And the final one, Maybe Tonight, again written by you and sung by Dave Davis. This is a very slow one, isn't it?
That's right, it's a ballad, and Dave Davis has a beautiful voice and really good singer. I looked round and thought, who could I ask to sing this? And there's 2 or 3 people in the club who could sing this kind of song and make a good job of it. But I sent it out to Dave first, and Dave sent it back, and he was pleased with it as well.
Well, let's have a listen to all these songs. You've put a lot of work into them, not only composing, but singing on one of them. But technically, it must have been a lot of work, but I think we'll all be pleased with the result. Mel Barnes from Leon District U3a, thank you very much for talking to me.
You're welcome. She walks the streets late at night. She don't give a damn if it's wrong or it's right. The mystery lady just wiggles her ass to grab the attention of the boys as they pass. Playing all night, sleeping all day. The mystery lady's very happy that way. Tired and cold, too long on her feet. She only comes home when she's ready to eat. With her long, long legs and her great big eyes, she leads the boys astray.
Dancing flies draw my eye to the water's edge. Reflections in the water clear. Something that you said made me realize that life goes by so fast. We've lived a dream and now it seems that we are in the past. Did we make such big mistakes? Did we get it wrong? Maybe we tried too hard, perfect's not for long. Love is like the water's edge, the ripples ebb and flow. Cup them in our hands, never let them go. Love will last forever.
Looking back, I know I should have been there. Your eyes roll at me, I know that you care. But I wasn't the only one who went missing. And you always knew I just went fishing. And now you know I'm never gonna disagree. And now you know I owe you that. And now with that guarantee, you'll always get more than that.
One more dance, just one more dance, to be in your arms once more. Oh, what I'd give for just one more dance, to be with the one I adore. Time moves on and years pass by. I'd give all the world for the chance. Maybe tonight we'll sit by the fire, both of our hearts filled with desire. Light a candle or two and share magic moments of our own. There's love in the air, it's around everywhere. So maybe tonight we'll turn down the light, spend time alone. Yes, baby, tonight we'll turn down the light, spend time alone.
The musical talents of Lee and District u3a, known as the Rolling Bones. My thanks to Mel Barnes, Gwen Caddick, Bob Sullivan, Joe Barmer, and Dave Davis. And that's it for this edition, and indeed for the next couple of months as we're taking a summer break. But we'll be back in September. My thanks to Peter Clift and Joanne Watson for the interviews, and to Ella Watts for producing the podcast. Until the autumn, this is Nick Bailey wishing you a most enjoyable summer.